Last night, Democratic Governor of California, Gavin Newsom, gave a viral speech in which he addressed the Los Angeles protests and brutally roasted Donald Trump and his corrupt administration. In the aftermath of this, Trump lashed out on Truth Social and then, in an interview with a Fox News and New York Post host, doubled down on the notion of arresting Newsom. But before we unpack all that, if you end up liking this video and you want to support the channel, please be sure to hit the like, subscribe, and alert bells before you go. All right, friends, we're going to take a look at Governor Newsom's speech in just a second, but I first want to show you Donald Trump's reaction to kind of whet your appetite, right? So this is from Donald Trump on Truth Social just this morning, the day after Newsom gave his speech. It's the first time that Trump has addressed Newsom since that speech aired. He says, "The incompetent governor of California was unable to provide protection in a timely manner when our ICE officers, great patriots they are, were attacked by an out-of-control mob of agitators, troublemakers, and/or insurrectionists. Make America great again." Okay? So that's him lashing out after this speech. So there's that. And then there's what he does on camera. So he has an interview with a truly repulsive Fox News host and New York Post contributor, Miranda Devine, who is one of the most dishonest MAGA losers in the media. And Trump seemed to double down on the notion of potentially arresting Governor Newsom.
Are you going to arrest Gavin Newsom?
Well, he's not doing a good job. You know, arrest, what does that mean? He's not doing a good job.
Charge him?
Well, in theory, you could, I guess. You know, it's almost like a dissipation of duty. Nobody's ever seen anything like that.
Are you going to
Yeah, so Trump was almost visibly, what's arrest mean? You don't know what arrest means and you're the president of the United States? Again, is that evidence of unparalleled stupidity on Trump's part or shocking cognitive decline such that perhaps the 25th Amendment should be invoked? And then, of course, he's like, well, you know, you could. And he's repeatedly called for Gavin Newsom's arrest. He did it twice in the past 48 hours, and I suppose this is now the third time. What are the charges? Dissipation of duty? What the hell does that mean? What specifically has Governor Newsom done that merits a criminal arrest? He has nothing. Of course he has nothing, because he's just simply an authoritarian and a fascist. And I'll say before we get to Governor Newsom's speech, when people say, well, the Democrats, they prosecuted Donald Trump, so turnabout's fair play. A couple of things. Number one, the Democrats did not prosecute Donald Trump. Donald Trump was prosecuted by federal and state officials. Now, in the case of Alvin Bragg, who was a Democrat, but this idea that there was some mass top-down coordinated conspiracy to arrest Trump, I know MAGA loves that notion. They have absolutely no evidence to support it, number one. Number two, then President Joe Biden never publicly called for Donald Trump's arrest because he recognized, I'm sure he wanted Donald Trump to be arrested. I have no doubt that personally that was his preference, and he's entitled to his preference. What he is not entitled to do, in my opinion, what no president is entitled to do, in my opinion, is to try to pressure the Justice Department, publicly or privately, to arrest their political opponents. Now, if their political opponents happen to commit crimes and their Justice Department independently confirms that and prosecutes them accordingly, that's fine. There's nothing inherently wrong with Gavin Newsom being arrested if Gavin Newsom commits a crime and if Donald Trump and Republicans don't publicly call for it. At the very least, Donald Trump, because he's the president. That's it. I don't support this notion that Gavin Newsom gets a get-out-of-jail-free card. Nobody does, including Gavin Newsom. But you have to prove that he committed a crime. And when you have no evidence that he committed a crime, and you have the sitting president of the United States once again calling for the public jailing, the public arrest of his political opponents, something President Biden never did, President Obama never did, President Clinton never did. This is a unique Trump phenomenon. It's a big fucking problem. And it makes Trump morally inferior to any elected Democrat. And he is. So MAGA, you lose that debate. Now let's get to Governor Newsom's speech. I will say, so he paired with the Midas Touch, who are, they have done extraordinary work. They are growing extraordinarily fast. They are dominating the liberal space. They are competing in many instances and outperforming Joe Rogan, friend of the show. Adam Mockler is a major contributor, major player in the Midas Touch. And Governor Newsom gave an excellent speech. We're going to play the whole thing. I will also say, seems like a potential campaign speech as well, and we'll talk about whether that's good news or bad news. But here's Governor Newsom in a brutal takedown of Donald Trump.
I want to say a few words about the events of the last few days. This past weekend, federal agents conducted large-scale workplace raids in and around Los Angeles. Those raids continue as I speak. California is no stranger to immigration enforcement, But instead of focusing on undocumented immigrants with serious criminal records and people with final deportation orders, a strategy both parties have long supported, this administration is pushing mass deportations, indiscriminately targeting hardworking immigrant families, regardless of their roots or risk. What's happening right now is very different than anything we've seen before. On Saturday morning, when federal agents jumped out of an unmarked van near a Home Depot parking lot, they began grabbing people, a deliberate targeting of a heavily Latino suburb. A similar scene played out when a clothing company was raided downtown. In other actions, a U.S. citizen, 9 months pregnant, was arrested, a 4-year-old girl taken, families separated, friends quite literally disappearing. In response, everyday Angelenos came out to exercise their constitutional right to free speech and assembly, to protest their government's actions. In turn, the state of California and the city and county of Los Angeles sent our police officers to help keep the peace. And with some exceptions, they were successful. Like many states, California is no stranger to this sort of unrest. We manage it regularly and with our own law enforcement. But this, again, was different.
So before we continue, let's just talk about this so far. So he's addressing the Los Angeles riots. He is condemning violence. He is condemning property destruction in no uncertain terms. He's not being mealy-mouthed about it. Now, this is the problem. Bad faith Republicans, both in the media and Republican politicians, don't give a damn. It doesn't matter that Governor Newsom and Mayor Bass have repeatedly, vociferously condemned violence and property damage. It doesn't matter because the fact that they're Democrats means that bad faith Republican politicians and mouthpieces will pretend that they didn't and that they somehow support the violence and property damage. And I also appreciate that he is recounting what happened prior to Trump's totally unnecessary intervention, which only served to escalate things. LAPD and state and local authorities were indeed successfully managing the protests. Donald Trump escalated, as Governor Newsom is about to address.
What then ensued was a use of tear gas, flashbang grenades, rubber bullets, federal agents detaining people and undermining their due process rights. Donald Trump, without consulting California law enforcement leaders, commandeered 2,000 of our state's National Guard members to deploy on our streets, illegally and for no reason. This brazen abuse of power by a sitting president inflamed a combustible situation, putting our people, our officers, and even our National Guard at risk. That's when the downward spiral began. He doubled down on his dangerous National Guard deployment by fanning the flames even harder. And the president, he did it on purpose. As the news spread throughout LA, anxiety for family and friends ramped up. Protests started again. By night, several dozen lawbreakers became violent and destructive. They vandalized property. They tried to assault police officers. Many of you have seen the video clips of cars burning on cable news. If you incite violence, I want to be clear about this. If you incite violence or destroy our communities, you're going to be held to account. That kind of criminal behavior will not be tolerated. Full stop. Already more than 220 people have been arrested, and we're reviewing tapes to build additional cases, and people will be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law. Again, thanks to our law enforcement officers and the majority of Angelenos who protested peacefully, the situation was winding down and was concentrated in just a few square blocks downtown. With that,
So let's stop right there, too. Again, Donald Trump and bad faith MAGA Republicans want you to believe that Los Angeles is a war zone, that the entire place is on fire. As Governor Newsom points out, these protests and the few instances, the rarefied instances of violence were contained to a few small blocks downtown. Now, does that mean it's okay? No, but it means it was a hell of a lot more contained and under control than bad faith Republican politicians and their mouthpieces want you to believe. It debunks the notion, the lie, that Los Angeles was on fire. Now, to the extent that these things have escalated, Donald Trump has played an active role. And again, note that Governor Newsom has said that there will be prosecutions for those who engage in violence and those who break the law to the fullest extent of the law. Bad faith Republican politicians and their mouthpieces don't give a damn. They will ignore that from Governor Newsom, but that is the truth, and MAGA are liars.
That's not what Donald Trump wanted. He again chose escalation. He chose more force. He chose theatrics over public safety. He federalized another 2,000 Guard members. He deployed more than 700 active U.S. Marines. These are the men and women trained for foreign combat, not domestic law enforcement. We honor their service. We honor their bravery. But we do not want our streets militarized by our own armed forces, not in LA, not in California, not anywhere. We're seeing unmarked cars in school parking lots, kids afraid of attending their own graduation. Trump is pulling a military dragnet all across Los Angeles, well beyond his stated intent to just go after violent and serious criminals. His agents are arresting dishwashers, gardeners, day laborers, and seamstresses. That's just weakness masquerading as strength. Donald Trump's government isn't protecting our communities. They're traumatizing our communities. And that seems to be the entire point. California will keep fighting. It will keep fighting on behalf of our people, all of our people, including in the courts. Just yesterday, we filed a legal challenge to Donald Trump's reckless deployment of American troops to a major American city. Today, we sought an emergency court order to stop the use of the American military to engage in law enforcement activities across Los Angeles. If some of us could be snatched off the streets without a warrant, based only on suspicion or skin color, then none of us are safe. Authoritarian regimes begin by targeting people who are least able to defend themselves, but they do not stop there. Trump and his loyalists, they thrive on division because it allows them to take more power and exert even more control. And by the way, Trump, he's not opposed to lawlessness and violence as long as it serves him. What more evidence do we need than January 6th? I ask everyone, take time, reflect on this perilous moment. A president who wants to be bound by no law or constitution, perpetuating a unified assault on American traditions. This is a president who in just over 140 days has fired government watchdogs that could hold him accountable for corruption and fraud. He's declared a war on culture, on history, on science, on knowledge itself. Databases, quite literally, are vanishing. He's delegitimizing news organizations, and he's assaulting the First Amendment. And the threat of defunding them, at threat, he's dictating what universities themselves can teach. He's targeting law firms and the judicial branch that are the foundations of an orderly and civil society. He's calling for a sitting governor to be arrested for no other reason than to, in his own words, for getting elected. And we all know this Saturday, he's ordering our American heroes, the United States military, and forcing them to put on a vulgar display to celebrate his birthday, just as other failed dictators have done in the past. Look, this isn't just about protests here in Los Angeles. When Donald Trump sought blanket authority to commandeer the National Guard, he made that order apply to every state in this nation. This is about all of us. This is about you. California may be first, but it clearly will not end here. Other states are next. Democracy is next. Democracy is under assault before our eyes. This moment we have feared has arrived. He's taking a wrecking ball to our founding fathers' historic project. 3 co-equal branches of independent government. There are no longer any checks and balances. Congress is nowhere to be found. Speaker Johnson has completely abdicated that responsibility. The rule of law has increasingly been given way to the rule of Don. The founding fathers, they didn't live and die to see this kind of moment. It's time for all of us to stand up. Justice Brandeis, he said it best. In a democracy, the most important office, with all due respect, Mr. President, is not the presidency, and it's certainly not governor. The most important office is office of citizen. At this moment, we all need to stand up and be held to account, a higher level of accountability. If you exercise your First Amendment rights, please, please do it peacefully. I know many of you are feeling deep anxiety, stress, and fear, but I want you to know that you are the antidote to that fear and that anxiety. What Donald Trump wants most is your fealty, your silence to be complicit in this moment. Do not give in to him.
So that was excellent. That was an excellent speech by Governor Newsom, who's always been one of the best communicators in the Democratic Party. He's been using those formidable powers of late in the wrong direction, as far as I'm concerned, with his podcast, cozying up to Steve Bannon and Charlie Kirk and right-wingers. And, you know, I understand the logic. We need to engage in respectful dialogue. We need to try to win them over. Bannon and Kirk have no respect for Governor Newsom, and probably have even less respect for him after their appearances. Charlie Kirk has been celebrating Donald Trump's attacks on Governor Newsom as well. So, Gavin, if you're watching, please like and subscribe, but it's gotten you nowhere, so rethink your approach. This approach, where you are forcefully and eloquently condemning Donald Trump, revealing to your constituents and to the American people the authoritarian tactics of Trump, that's good. Fight Trump. Fight Trump. That's the point. That's what Democratic voters and constituents want. We don't want you breaking bread with Trump. We don't want you becoming Trump's best friend. 9 times out of 10, we want you giving Trump the finger. That's what you should be doing. Any Democratic politician who doesn't do that has a serious issue as far as I'm concerned. I do want to conclude with this. On the polls show that the American people are not happy with Donald Trump's deployment of the National Guard and U.S. Marines in Los Angeles. Could that change with effective Republican propaganda? You bet your ass that could change. And I hope it doesn't, but that's the power of right-wing media. But as of this moment, according to YouGov, 47% of U.S. adults disapprove of deploying the Marines to Los Angeles, with only 34% approval. 45% disapprove the National Guard deployment, and 38% say they approve. So right now, public opinion, public sentiment, at least in terms of Trump's authoritarian response, still sits with Democrats. And Governor Newsom and other Democratic leaders in and out of California need to take advantage of that and try to press their advantage. It's one of the few advantages that we have at the moment. And I will also say, that sure seems like a campaign speech. Seems like Governor Newsom is prepping for a presidential run in 2028. He certainly has the ambition. He has the talent. I disagree with him a lot on policies. He's going to have to figure that shit out. But I think it's good to see Governor Newsom using his talents to push back on Trump in a major, major way. So this was an excellent speech, and we'll see what happens. It certainly seems to have triggered Donald Trump. But in the meantime, let me know what you think in the comments.